Hi, my name is Taylor Wagner and I'm a clinical research analyst at PFS Clinical. The goal of this webinar is to provide information and resources on how to determine if drugs are on-label or off-label for coverage analysis. Investigational drugs are a common focus for clinical research trials. The investigational drug may be given in combination with other drugs, and the investigational drug may require supportive medications to counteract side effects. Usually, the investigational drug is provided by the sponsor. However, there may be some cases where the study drug must be analyzed. In these cases, it is important to determine if the drugs given in the study are on or off-label for compliance with Medicare rules. Common settings where Medicare may provide coverage for drugs includes non-self-administered outpatient drugs, self-administered outpatient drugs, and inpatient drugs. In this webinar, we will be focusing on inpatient drugs and non-self-administered drugs. Drug analysis follows a sequence of steps. First, you must determine if the drug is administered in an inpatient or outpatient setting. This can be determined by referencing the study protocol or informed consent form. If the drug is given in the outpatient setting, then you must determine if the drug is on-label or off-label. If the drug is off-label, then you must determine if the drug is medically or not medically accepted. We will start with Medicare Benefit Policy Manual, Chapter 1. Medicare generally provides coverage for inpatient drugs. Medicare Benefit Policy Manual, Chapter 1 states, drugs and biologicals for use in the hospital, which are ordinarily furnished by the hospital for the care and treatment of inpatients, are covered. This citation can be used supporting coverage for inpatient drugs. If a drug is not given in an inpatient setting, you must analyze whether it is on or off-label. A drug that is on-label is commercially available, used exactly as intended on the drug label, and has been through the full FDA approval process. At PFS Clinical, DailyMed is the preferred source to find labels since it is provided by the NIH. When determining if a drug is on label, search for the drug on DailyMed and determine if the drug is being used exactly as intended on the drug label. For example, cytarabine is approved for patients with acute non-lymphocytic leukemia. Therefore, we can state that cytarabine is FDA approved for patients with this indication, and therefore, this medication is used on label and is billable. If the drug is not being used exactly as the drug label intends on DailyMed, then the drug is considered off-label. Medicare will cover off-label anticancer and other drugs that are medically accepted. You can determine if it's medically accepted by using NCCN Drugs and Biological Compendium, chemotherapy order templates, guidelines, or other peer-reviewed journal articles. If no support can be found to provide coverage for the drug, it may not be medically accepted. However, in this case, you should still reach out to the PI, as they may know of additional supporting documentation. They can also help to determine whether or not to bill the drug if no documentation can be found. For off-label analysis, Medicare Benefit Policy Manual, Chapter 15, Section 50.4.5 may be cited for anticancer drugs. This section of Chapter 15 also lists out Medicare-approved peer-reviewed journals for determining medically accepted oncology medications, which will be useful for your analysis. If support can be found to provide coverage for an anticancer drug in the compendium or journal articles, Chapter 15, Section 50.4.5 can be used to support coverage for that anticancer drug. For example, etoposide is not FDA approved for patients with classical Hodgkin lymphoma. However, according to the NCCN Drugs and Biologicals Compendium, etoposide is medically accepted for patients with this indication. Therefore, we can cite coverage supported by Medicare Benefit Policy Manual, Chapter 15, Section 50.4.5. Chapter 15, Section 50.4.2 can also be used for off-label analysis. This section of Chapter 15 in the MBPM is used to support coverage for other drugs outside of anti-cancer drugs. For example, Ranitidine is being used in this study as an H2 antagonist prior to being administered paclitaxel. In DailyMed, you can find that ranitidine is not FDA approved to treat allergic reactions. But according to NCCN chemotherapy order templates, ranitidine is medically accepted as a hypersensitivity pre-medication for paclitaxel. Therefore, we can cite coverage supported by Medicare Benefit Policy Manual, Chapter 15, Section 50.4.2. There will be some scenarios where support is extremely difficult to find. In this case, the drug may not be medically accepted and the following citation can be used in your analysis. Off-label use of drugs in an anticancer regimen are billable if they are considered medically accepted as defined by MBPM Chapter 15, Section 50.4.5. Under this rule, off-label medically accepted indications are supported in either one or more of the compendia or in peer-reviewed medical literature. This medication may be billable pending further documentation. A similar citation can be used for all other drugs, but instead of citing Chapter 15, Section 50.4.5, you'll cite Chapter 15, Section 50.4.2 instead. As mentioned previously, the PI should be contacted in case he or she has supporting documentation to help provide support for billing the drug. The PI also may help to decide whether to make the drug billable or not billable in this situation. In summary, this webinar discussed how to determine if a drug is on or off label for coverage analysis. We reviewed a sequence of steps by first determining whether a drug is administered in the inpatient or outpatient setting by referencing the study protocol and consent forms, providing support for inpatient drugs by citing Medicare Benefit Policy Manual Chapter 1, then determining whether an outpatient drug is on-label or off-label, citing DailyMed for on-label FDA-approved drugs, and lastly, determining whether an off-label study drug is medically or not medically accepted, citing Medicare Benefit Policy Manual Chapter 15, Section 50.4.5 or 50.4.2 for support. Here's a list of references that were used for this webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me using the information provided on this slide. Thank you for listening to this webinar and have a great day.